Man, the past week has been kind of insane.
Yeah, my readings are going off the chart. I seriously have been noticing some things are just straight vanishing in that singularity, but they don't visually vanish. It's like I see a rock, but the rock isn't there according to my equipment.
I wasn't talking about the ship ring, I was talking about my job on this ship.
You work? What do you do here? Like, how are you paid? Do they use your currency?
They give me throne gilts, which is apparently the currency of the Imperium, but these are digital currencies, so I doubt they'll transfer to dollars when I get back home. But I do food delivery. It's actually pretty easy work, though. After 6 serfs dying, I've been working more than 40 hours, which is into the overtime period for the Imperium.
I actually don't know how mortal serf laws work. What's the overtime period for you?
Well, let's do some math. In my time, overtime is considered working 40 hours plus in a week. But in a few hundred years before that, during the Renaissance period, they worked 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, which, with more days off, sometimes whole seasons off, depending on what they did, but most workers also ended up working a full 7 days a week because of, well, farm labor. So, if an average work period is 96 hours in a week, but it's down to 40 in my time, we can assume that the average work week may only be 24 hours in the 41st millennium, especially with the use of servitors and such, obvious outliers excluded in this countdown.
Wait, you only need to work 24 hours a week? I'm working 140 minimum with a 15-minute break once a day.
You can also work and fight without sleeping for several days, if not weeks, and only need 4 hours of sleep a day to function without the extra bedtime organ kicking in. But now it's time to talk about the subject of this video. No game. Well, not a singular game. Another list.
So, feeling lazy?
Yeah, honestly, with how tough of a week it's been for me, I'm going to make a list of various games I'm surprised aren't TTRPGs, or at least aren't upkept or official TTRPGs. Some of these may have some tabletop games, but the company doesn't do anything with them. So, first on the list, I'm really surprised there's no Digimon TTRPG. I was looking for a game to give a vibe of Digimon around the time I was looking into many unofficial Pokemon games. I admit I preferred Digimon to Pokemon growing up, and I'm sure a friend of mine will question that, but the shows were much cooler. The video games are a bit hit and miss, though. I just want to get an Angemon as a Digidestined, or tell a story where a random Numemon getting way too high in the ego department. I honestly want to run a Digimon game for just comedy purposes. Of course, I can't talk about Digimon without bringing up Pokemon. Funny thing is, I think Pokemon had an official tabletop game, but if it did, it's been a very long time since the companies involved have done anything with it. Honestly, I can't say much about the possible Pokemon game that I didn't say about the Digimon. Though I know the games have a personality system, the video games that is, for the Pokemon, along with abilities, hidden abilities, techniques, and several other options too, which would make the pocket monsters more unique. So there's some options. I could genuinely think of a Yu-Gi-Oh based tabletop game, and I thought of some gameplay mechanics that might be interesting. You could make a 40 card deck with certain abilities activating with certain card types or attributes. If you get the same sort of card of an enemy, perhaps card level could work as certain winnings sort of things. Look, that's just a general idea, nothing specific or worked out, though Konami, if you're interested in a tabletop RPG set in the Yu-Gi-Oh setting, give me a call. You still do those comics, right? Or does Bandai own the comics? Wait, no. Bandai was the original makers of the OCG, but not the popular ones. But let's move on to more video games based on tabletop ideas. Bethesda will be coming up here a lot, actually. Why are there no Elder Scrolls RPGs or Doom RPGs? There's a board game for both, but an unofficial tabletop RPG for the Skyrim game. Modiphius would make an Elder Scrolls tabletop RPG, as they've already made the Fallout one. Why not have them make one for Elder Scrolls as well? Doom is probably a bit harder, but with the multiple failed PvP games, Bethesda, why not use that as a base? Hell, you made a board game based off the PvP for Doom 2016. Why not an RPG that allows players to fight demons from hell and stop mad cultists? So, what about other games? Well, I'm surprised World of Warcraft doesn't have a more updated TTRPG, but it's probably because Hasbro wants more of a share of the game they're dealing with, unlike what TSR was asking for making the 3rd edition version of the game, which I reviewed a long time ago and did not have positive things to say. Of course, there is a Diablo TTRPG based off what is widely considered to be the 2nd or maybe 3rd worst Diablo game, Diablo 4, which is very beaten for worse by Diablo Immortal, but still. The Diablo TTRPG released in August of this year after a Kickstarter sponsor goal thingamadoodad. There's an unofficial StarCraft game, but there's nothing official. I really like sci-fi games, so I'll admit some bias. StarCraft, however, is essentially a Warhammer 40,000 game, so there's options to be playing in that setting, even if it is slightly altered as to the vibe. Especially since the Protists are just plant people with blood. Seriously, they don't eat. But sticking with the Activision Blizzard thematics, I'm very surprised that AB hasn't tried to do a TTRPG of their Call of Duty franchise, especially given military war games are growing in popularity at a slow but steady rate. Seriously, even I'm looking into bolt action. Activision could absolutely make a Call of Duty based RPG based around military capabilities, and with so many games to choose from, they could go as far back as the Civil War to the near future or even far future, despite how desperately they don't want you to play Infinite Warfare. You know, Microsoft, you own them. And Halo. Why not make a Halo RPG? Could have multiple classes, aliens like the elites, brutes, and grunts, Spartan 2s since they're now 3 survivors of Reach instead of just the Master Chief, Spartan 3s going all the way to... we have Spartan 5s now? Could have ODSTs or enlisted soldiers too. And there's many other options that you could pull from with that unofficial one that requires you to sign up for a guy's Patreon, unfortunately, despite me wanting to review them. I could probably keep going, and I really need to get some rest. I know this week is gonna be as busy as last week, so shove off.